Welcome back to the lecture series of General Chemistry 1. This is the continuation of Chapter 2 and about atoms, molecules, and ions, and Chapter 2, atom, molecules, and ion. And in this second part, we will discuss nomenclature, naming of two different types of compound, molecular and ionic compounds. Okay, molecular compound, also known as covalent compound, and that's the first step. We need to be able to identify what type. Okay, the quick way I would identify a molecular compound is by looking at the elements, and if it has two or more nonmetals, usually two. Okay, if we look at the binary compound, two nonmetals like carbon and oxygen, we know is molecular compound. We name the first one first. The lower group usually go first, like carbon, group 14, and then oxygen is group 16, is go second. The second elements we name, and then we make sure we change the ending to IDE. So oxygen become oxide, nitrogen become nitride, carbon become carbide, so on and so forth. Now, if you have more than one, you need to use a numerical prefix. Okay, one for mono, but that's only if for the second element. You don't use that for the first elements. Okay, other than that, if it's two, you use di, three, you use tri, and so on and so forth. Okay, here's a few examples. If you have 2N2O5, that's the first compound, okay, the molecular compound. If you have two nitrogens, you call it dinitrogens. And then you have 5 oxygens, that would be 5 is penta, and oxygen is oxide. So, but you drop the A, so it sounds better. Instead of saying pentaoxide, you name it, you call it pentoxide. Now, remember for here, one of the little exception here, for compound with hydrogens, you don't use prefix at all. Okay, it's already a fixed formulas, especially with group 16 or 17, like oxygens, or group 17 like chlorine. For group 15, such as nitrogens, there's usually special name from my understanding, like NH3, we always call it ammonia, and PH3, we call it phosphine. That's pretty much it for group number 15. Okay, but for group 16 or 17, here's the two examples from group 16. You get two hydrogen and sulfur, and that's we call them hydrogen sulfide, not hydrogen monosulfide. Okay, so no prefix needed if you have hydrogens. H2O, you call that water, or you can also call them hydrogen oxide. That's the scientific name for water. All right. And notice that if you have hydrogen peroxide, that's H2O2, that's the different, because O2 in that case is peroxide. So we're not going to be confused with that, right? Okay, so that's for molecular compounds. It's actually very straightforward. Prefixes for quantity, whatever come first, you name them first. Okay, and the lower group always go first. You don't want to write O2 and O5N2, just like CO2. CO2 is carbon dioxide. You don't want to write O2C. Okay, you write carbon first because the group is 14 is lower group, and oxygen group 16, the higher group goes second. Okay, that's the trend. For ionic compound, that's usually a metal and a non-metal. That's a binary compound, and of course you also have polyatomic ions. Okay, and I have made a whole table for that. Okay, and then you can use that as a reference. Polyatomic ions, or you can look it up in a textbook. So you name the cation first, which is the metal come first, except ammonium is not a metal, but it's a cation. So you name the cation first, and then you name the anion with the ending changed to IDE, or if you have a polyatomic ion, you use the exact one. Okay. There's a few elements that we need to know the various charges, like copper, iron, tin, chromium, manganese, those are the ones that form various charges. So you have to use a Roman numerals to indicate a charge. Okay, if it's a +1, Roman number 1 is +2, Roman number 2.